Ned Balme, thank you very much for joining us on Perceived Pressure.
Hello, mate. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it. Love the pod.
Long time in the making. You were our very first person to post us on the story, so we're very excited. We've designated you friend of the pod,
Friend of the pod
which I think
immediately.
is which I think is fair, friend of the pod. But yeah, there's so much about your story that I'm really excited to sort of get stuck into because it's a little bit unique and it's a little bit
It's all
it's
over
the
the
path
shop.
less travelled. It is very much the path less travelled, and it's very colourful. So I guess you're here on a sports podcast because you have a variety of sporting experiences, but you were an elite athlete yourself. You were a punter at the University of Central Oklahoma from 2013, 2014. Is that right?
Yeah, so from 13 to 2013, played until 15, and then came home in 2016. So I was there for 3 years, played 2 seasons over there because I
So
was I was one of the older guys. So I only had 2 years of eligibility to play.
it's one of those, and I guess I lead with punter because it sort of gives away the nature of the recruitment a little bit. I guess talk me through it. Sort of, it hadn't taken off this idea of punters being recruited from Australia quite yet. You had a couple of guys go over. I think Ben Graham had gone over at this point,
Yep, Sav Rocker,
but Sav Rocker had gone over, but it wasn't. It hadn't taken
Darren
yet.
Darren Bennett laid the platform for them.
What was it like for you? Was it one of those? Were you an early success of these sort of specialist coaches, or how did it come about that you went from presumably playing football in Australia to the States, and
Yeah,
what were you playing football wise?
yeah. Well, obviously grew up playing footy. What with my family, with the Barm name and everything. Obviously grew up playing footy.
And for those who are north of the Barassi line, perhaps
Yes.
what is the Barm name? It obviously it rings bells
So
for Richmond fans everywhere, but
yeah. So Neil Barm, current Adelaide board member, or long time administrator, long time player, coach of the Melbourne Demons in the '90s. He's my uncle, and my dad, Craig, played a handful of games for Richmond, won an under-19s premiership with them back in the '80s, and then played 254 Norwood in the Sandful. Won the 1984 premiership in the Sandful against Port Adelaide, one of the great grand finals of all time. And the best thing about that grand final, and he hates me mentioning it, but the best thing about that grand final is that the sticking point for that game was the fact that my old man and Tim Evans, the full forward from Port Adelaide, got into a punch up in the goal square during the national anthem, which
oh
to
my
me is just
god.
funny. Like never ceases to be funny.
Is that reflective of of your old man and his personality? Is that because I know some people have that sort of white line fever? Is that what you know your dad to be? This argy bargy type?
Honestly, not at all. And people will say the same thing about the Neil that they know now, which is like they're both big, cuddly, well-spoken teddy bears now. And then, but you ask a Carlton fan what he thinks of Neil, you ask a Port Adelaide fan what they think of my dad, and they're just, oh, absolute bloody grubs, the lot of them. Absolutely, we'll never forgive him what he did to what he did on that day. It's just, it is funny. It is funny, and I like turning the knife every now and again when we can.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so you grew up in Adelaide then?
Yeah, bounced around. So, grew up in Adelaide. Um, Dad was actually the ruck coach in the inaugural Port Adelaide team in 1997 under John Cale. Then we moved to Melbourne for family reasons. Dad was the ruck coach at Collingwood under Mick Mulhouse for about 4 or 5 years. And then we moved to WA, got away from footy, and then just a bit of a sea change, but obviously still played footy just down in Mandurah. Mighty mighty Peel Thunder down there. Not that I made Peel Thunder because I was unfit. I was very unfit. But then, yeah, then went up to play high school up at Aquinas College. Um, Obviously, powerhouse footy like school up there. Graduated with a little guy called Nat Fife. Um, pretty
He could play a bit.
pretty talented young player. Although I do recall he couldn't crack the firsts, but that was because our coach at the time was an absolute idiot. He had a like,
Was that one of those like I'm not going to play the kids, you wait till you're 12,
it
that
was
sort of thing?
actually he had just more of a tall man philosophy. So he'd want to pick the kids who are, especially in the forward line, he'd want to pick the kids who are above 6 foot at in year 12. So you've got like a forward line of 6 foot two 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds or whatever. I played one game and was rubbish and was not committed to it at all, and then I asked to be dropped. Like
Because
it
all
was
your
one of
mates are
those like
playing.
it was one of those you can't fire me, I quit type deals because like I'm pretty sure I was going to get dropped after not getting a touch against I think it was Wesley. Um, but the thing about Fifey is that he didn't have his growth spurt until first year out of high school.
Yeah, right.
So he was probably like 5'9", 5'10" in year
There's hope
12.
for me yet.
Yeah, yeah. And then he had his year in the waffle with Claremont, absolutely tore it up and grew to like 6'2", but kept all that agility. But it took him a few games to break into the first 18 because our coach was an idiot and he was just like, nah, not tall enough. This future dual Brownlow medalist doesn't pass the 6 foot tall mark.
I wonder
So
what I wonder what that coach says now. I coached Nat Five, taught him everything he knows, or do you cop
yeah.
it as the funny story and say, "Oh, I actually didn't pick Nat Five for the first 6 games of the
Well,
season."
the thing is, I mean, my memory's pretty bad, but I'm pretty sure we won the school comp that year. So it's one of those like any kind of mistakes that were made along the way were just forgotten about because you won the comp in the end of the day. So, but that's like, yeah, that's one of those things where it was just I was I was playing footy around that time, but kind of falling out of love with it a little bit, just because the game was changing. There was a lot more running. Like I grew up as full forward, full back, just keen for a wrestle, all that stuff. And then I started actually playing American football locally in WA, like
Yeah,
trying like
right.
outside linebacker, just that kind of stuff locally. And then eventually got to the stage where it was after a couple of failed uni degrees, just not really getting my life in order and probably consuming too much stuff that I shouldn't and just failing a couple of degrees. It was like I could actually get serious about this. Like I've got a leg on me, always have, always been able to roost it. Like why don't I see if I can make this happen somehow? And then that time it was a big family initiative. We just said, all right, I'm not playing footy anymore. I'm focusing purely on this and that's all I'm doing. And back then it was very, very different because we're talking 2012 was when I started the process there. So Pro Kick was there are a few different ones going around. There was Ozpunt, who I tinkered with because they were a lot cheaper basically. And then there was Pro Kick, who obviously have just killing the game, continue to be. But there weren't any WA academies at that stage. There weren't any coaches or anything over there. So for Pro Kick, it was basically, hey, you're going to have to fly yourself over to Melbourne pretty much every couple of months or something like that to be part of our camps and all that stuff, which is obviously not possible. So it ended up being more of an individual route that we took where big family team effort where mum helped with the admin. She literally went through every every website of every college program, Division 1 through Division 2. So Division 1, 1AA as it was, and then Division 2. Got the numbers, email addresses of special teams coordinator, athletic director of every single school. And then
Wow.
we would film kicks, we'd cut them up, and we would send the emails out. And then for about a 4 or 5 month period there, from about 10 o'clock at night till about 3 o'clock in the morning to get on that American time zone, it was just cold calling athletic programs and saying,
Wow.
"Have you got my tape?" Um,
Wow.
and just hoping that they would give a scholarship to a punter because a lot of them didn't. They were just like, "Nah, you're a punter. We'll get you to
You'll
walk
just
on."
recruit. We'll get a walk on some soccer
Yeah,
player or whatever it might be.
yeah. We'll get some guy to walk on, or we'll get some. You can come over, but hey, we're the University of Tennessee. You should want to walk on here. You know, it's like, yeah, I would, but that's a lot of money. Um,
That is exactly right.
it was pretty much scholarship or bust. So that was about a 4 or 5 month process just to
Mhm.
get over there. Um, and then I got extremely fortunate with going to Central Oklahoma, which was Division Two, which was
Mhm.
great because it gave me an extra year of eligibility. And this was back when the NCAA the rules were a lot more stringent back then.
Mm.
So my options were Division One for 1 year, which kind of didn't really seem worth it, or Division Two and get 2 years of eligibility in there, play two
Mhm.
seasons, get closer to a degree, that kind of thing, which seemed like
Mhm.
the correct route to take at that time. But it was an entirely different beast back then, just trying to get a foot in the door, especially if you didn't live in Melbourne, basically.
Wow. It. I guess what is the college recruitment like? I mean, the stereotype of all of these all of these emails, all these clips, and sort of going out these cold calls and so on is a common one. It's a trope well trodden in American film, but is I guess did you have multiple offers to choose from? How did you end up at UCO?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of, obviously, like a lot of punters, a lot of offers to walk on. Like I was, and it got to the stage where we were looking at the checkbook and being like, all right, could we swing it? Even if it's just for, do we try and squirrel the money aside, bank on yourself for a semester to pick really well to the point where they have to give you a
Say you
scholarship.
can.
Otherwise, you can leave. But you got to remember as well that back then there wasn't the transfer portal either. Like there was, so
You'd have to
the idea
redshirt
of
and blah blah blah.
yeah, the idea of if you if I all of a sudden they still weren't going to scholarship me anywhere, I would have to say, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going to go to junior college somewhere for a year, and then punt for a whole season well there just to get a scholarship opportunity somewhere else. So it was a whole different thing. It's not like it is now where you can put a couple of good months of tape on into the portal and then find yourself a new home, the next day. It's a totally different thing. And but the recruiting process was, I was probably, I'm gonna sound like one of those I could have been something type guys, but I
No,
was
this is what
very
the
close.
opportunity is for.
Yeah, exactly. I was very close to walking on at Tennessee, very close to walking on at Baylor, very close to walking on at Rutgers, and just going through those processes. And I had a scholarship offer from university from UCF from Central Florida.
My cousins played at
But
UCF,
yeah, yeah. So I
which
was
we'll
very
get
close to
into.
playing for the Golden Knights, but then all of a sudden, I think I'm trying to remember. I literally still have all the emails in my Gmail account, just for
Wow.
prosperity. But and then it was one of those things where the special teams coordinator got fired or something, and so you're back to square one. Like you're that close to getting over the line. So honestly, there was a time where my girlfriend at the time, now wife, we went for a 5 day getaway. We went up to Hong Kong just to go somewhere, and like we were having discussions there. I'm just like, I think I'm done. Like I don't think I can put myself through this for another year just to get onto the recruitment circuit again. Um, And then it was actually her and mum and dad that were like, no, no, just stick with it for another few months. Something will happen. And then UCO came about, and they needed someone, and we managed to make it work financially and otherwise. And yeah, it ended up being the best decision ever. Like I'm still really just good mates with all of my friends from back there. One of my best mates there ended up being one of my groomsmen. He'd never been. We got we got married in in Europe, and he'd never been out of America. So we helped sort out his passport so we could get him
Oh
to
wow,
Europe.
that's
Um,
fantastic.
so the biggest, not to get too far into the weeds on it, but the biggest heartbreak at the moment is that given the current state of things, I can't see myself going back to visit anytime soon.
I guess that's probably that's a good segue. It's a very neat segue. That's television experience for you. In terms of, I guess, what you see now, the differences of, how do the kids these days, and obviously there's Australians everywhere, and NIL's a thing, and do you ever, do you have kids come your way and ask you, how did you do it? What do I do? And I guess, what do you say to them if they do?
Well, I mean, a few that I've spoken to and I stay in contact with, but in the same way, it is honestly, it is such a different environment at the moment that the advice you can offer is more like evergreen advice because a lot of it doesn't actually apply now. The whole notion of, hey, stick with it, grind away, beat out your competition, and the cream will rise to the top. It might take a couple of years, but you'll beat out, or you're trying to wait for this senior to graduate, the senior quarterback or something to graduate, and then there'll be a competition when you're a sophomore or something, and you'll get your shot. Well, that kind of advice doesn't apply anymore because you
Now it's
can be
changed the college that wants you.
yeah, you can be a freshman and put tape together from your spring game. Not even competitive games against other teams, but you can have, a huddle account that has all your highlight reels from just scrimmages between against your own teammates. And you're putting them out as a highlight reel because, hey, I'm third or fourth on the depth chart here. I'm not getting a look in. The next thing you're out, which, but like in many ways, I wish that was a possibility when I was there. But the romantic side of it is cool. I had a consistent group of friends for 3 years, to the point where I went back to visit in 2018 to see the freshmen in the guys that were freshmen in my senior year. I went back so I could watch their last game. Like
Yeah. Oh,
that's just the type of environment you had, which is just getting increasingly rare, especially when you see, people they go for the draft now and their colleges reads off like they've been to four different colleges.
yeah, exactly right. There was it Carson Wentz who gave the interview recently where they said, "Have you got? Is it Carson Wentz, the Florida quarterback?" And
Oh no, sorry, no,
I'm gonna
Carson Beck from Miami.
Carson Beck, yeah, Miami,
Yeah, yeah.
and he gave this. Wentz is a different quarterback, isn't he?
Wentz is the old Wentz was the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback. Well, he's bounced around now, but
Yes.
he went to North Dakota State.
I'm showing my American football knowledge here.
But that's
But
one of
yeah, like
that's
Beck, he
also
gave that
one
interview,
of
right?
Yeah, but that's one of the great games. I saw something the other day. One of the great games of all time with football fans has been, hey, that NFL player, where'd he go to college? And that was a game that you'd
Yes.
play. Be like, oh, he went to UTEP or something, didn't he? It's like you wouldn't even know now. Like, you might get drafted from somewhere, but even Mendoza, who's the quarterback for Indiana, he has more career stats at Cal than Indiana. He just transferred over there. Um,
Exactly right.
so,
It
but
reminds me
yeah,
of
no, it's just totally different. So as it pertains to the question, the advice is very like a lot of them are kind of platitudes. It's just kind of work ethic type stuff. But the actual ingrained, hey, day-to-day advice is so different because your environment can change within 3 months, whereas when I was there, you were pretty much locked in.
it strikes me as it strikes me as almost similar to what is happening in recreational sport as well. Increasingly, of it is more and more difficult to lock in those friendships and lock in those social circles because everyone is happy to. It feels like everyone's attention spans are a little bit shorter, and everyone's happy to chase the footy club up the road that's paying them a bit more, or the cricket club where the subs are a bit less, or the beers get put on at the end of a game or whatever it might be. Everyone feels compelled to chase it. And I guess, I mean, I say that, they won't appreciate me saying this, but, going through it with my local club at the moment where rival clubs are offering cheaper rego and players are saying, well, cost of living crisis, see you later. All of these other economic factors feel like they are impinging on what used to be, you play for your local club, you don't even think about it, and the scenario you play for your local club, you don't even think about it, and the people that you get given as teammates or as volunteers or members of that community are just it. You don't get another choice in that. So it feels like a different world almost. And I'm not that old. I'm 27.
Yeah, and I'm actually going through something at this year where I'm changing footy clubs at 34 years old, but my situation is very much just hey, I've only got a few more years playing local footy. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I need to make sure that I'm at a place where they're happy. They've got good facilities around them to run around on a Friday night when they because I'm very much aware that there's a lot of things that are pulling me away from footy at the moment, between work and family commitments and everything. That Friday night when I go out and play footy, it can't be a begrudging, oh shit, you're going out to play footy again, are you? Well, we'll be here,
When you
we'll
come
be here
back,
waiting for you to get back at 11 o'clock at night. Like,
yeah,
it
exactly.
can't
It's
be
something that you
it can't
engage
be that
with.
way. But,
No, exactly right.
but it's, yeah, I mean, as it pertains to college football, I think it is a bit sad. I don't mean to sound like one of the old, in my days it was better type thing. Like, I'm never going to begrudge players getting their money, because for the longest time, yeah, college football players were providing way too much value, way too much value to a university, and it was grossly outweighed. Um, and truth be told, the value that they brought, the ones that were bringing the value, they weren't interested in the education side of things anyway. Like, or it
Exactly.
wasn't their.
Swahili
I'm not.
classes.
Yeah, and it's probably not fair to say they weren't interested in that, because many have obviously graduated and all that stuff, but it wasn't their primary reason for being at Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, so in one hand, all the people that said, "Oh, you're getting a free degree," it's like, yeah, that's great, but I'm not here for. As much as it sounds bad, I'm not here for that. I'm here to win you football games, and you benefit from that with television deals and merch sales and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm put it this way. I'm happy that I played when I did, because I'm happy that it brought me the friendships that have endured the better part of a decade now.
No, absolutely. And I guess it did take you. I mean, you graduated eventually with. Is that right? You did graduate with a
Yeah.
communications degree from the University of Central Oklahoma.
Well, see, the good thing about the American system, right? So I was doing communications, but to get the degree, I would have had to do like a 6 months unpaid internship, which just wasn't possible for me on my visa and everything like that. So I switched to a general studies or where basically all of my classes, bar for a few, were communications, journalism type stuff. But technically in America, while that would be a Bachelor of Arts in Australia, over there it's a Bachelor of Science. So it actually sounds quite impressive when I can say I've got a Bachelor of Science, keeping in mind that I dropped science and math in year nine, and
Great. Yes.
I needed to get special permission from Aquinas to drop it that early because I hated it so much. And now I'm just like, it's like my brother's a lawyer for the RAF, and I'm like, yeah, but you're not a scientist though, are
That's fantastic. I love that. That brings me so much joy.
you? Like it till you
The
make it.
I guess with your Bachelor of Science, you come back to Australia, you become a reporter, and I guess, and now you're at Channel 9,
Yep.
recently moved. I guess, and this is now the extremely belated segue, into, I guess, current affairs and sort of some more recent events that sort of want to talk about. And I guess the first of them, as you mentioned before, and I've extremely belatedly segued into despite signalling it, was I guess this idea we saw at the Australian Open that American players being asked about ice and everything that's happening over there. It's not just ice, but that's a big part of it in terms of a personal safety perspective and it being so polarized. You and it sort of fairly roundly got taken down as like, why would you ask that? Why would you put a player in that position, or B, like, keep politics out of sports? That's not why they're here. Blah blah blah. So I guess I want your take on A, the ethics, B, like the journalistic side of like how valuable is that when a player is in that position, and should we be asking them that anyway? And I guess to make that question a little bit more spicy, like I do find myself wondering, like, are we going to see this, upcoming FIFA World Cup or the LA Olympics as like, are we going to see them? How far down a line of fascism are we seeing in the States? And, are we going to see these events as equivalent to Berlin in 1936?
Well, I mean, that's one of the
Sorry, that's very loaded.
at the end of the day, we're already starting to see the impacts regarding the FIFA World Cup, because you've got people who are actively saying, I have tickets, or I'm selling my tickets because I don't feel comfortable going there. Say if I'm from a certain country, I don't want to be um, I don't want to be misconstrued, or I don't want to be misidentified as somebody that they may put into a certain basket. And then I'm dealing with all this headache when all I'm going over there is to support my national team at an event that America wants people to come to, or wanted people to, when they won the bid. Um, so that's like the money will talk in that situation. Because if FIFA isn't getting their returns early on ticket sales and everything like that, and if all of a sudden, the World Cup final tickets they can't upsell for the value that they think they can, because, well, this location just isn't as sought after as others. Or if maybe some of the events in surrounding areas, maybe they're getting better return for those tickets than they are the American ones. Like, these are the questions that they have to kind of contend with. Um, so that'll be interesting to see. The good thing is we've got a couple of pretty early case studies. You got the Olympics, and you've got the World Cup. Um, so we'll know pretty quickly whether the money differs based on the political climate around how people are seeing America externally at this stage. Um, and in regards to the questioning, I'm I don't mean to, I don't, I'm not going to ride the fence, but I will say I'm in two minds on it, because I, like, to be honest, like a lot of young Anglo-Saxon bloody Australian guys, when I was, in my late teens and stuff, I was very much part of the, hey, keep politics out of sports type thing. It's not possible. That's just not, it's not realistic. Politics is sport, sport is politics. You don't get sport to a town without politics. Like, it's, it's part of the reason Peter Malinauskas is so damn popular in South Australia, because they've used their politics to bring sport to town. So that whole notion of keep politics and sport separate is just stupid. And we've seen that the people who do say that are often more than happy to renege on that idea if the politics suit them. Um, so yeah, teams visiting the White House. Like the winning championship teams visit the White
Certain
House.
AFL coaches.
Oh, yeah, it's we have all of that. Yeah, we see all of that stuff. So, but as it pertains to like the individuals, I'm I'm I don't know. I'm wary on the idea of thinking that every time that a player fronts media that it's 100% open slather on any issue that we feel like we should talk about, because in a lot of I think in the world at the moment you have a real glut of uneducated opinions. And I don't think forcing somebody or putting somebody on the back foot to give an uneducated opinion isn't helpful. It might give you an idea of their true colours, and then we get to say, oh, geez, that's disappointing. But what do we gain from it? Now, it's totally different if someone is opinionative or does wear it on their sleeve on a personal level, but then when the lights are on, they want to say, "Oh no, I don't feel like talking about that here." That's a bit different. Like I think it was Nick Bosa, the defensive end for the 49ers. Big big trumper, big MAGA guy. Where's the MAGA hat on the sideline? All that stuff. Was asked about it in the change rooms afterwards. He's like, "Oh no, I'm not going to talk about that." It's like, well, that in that situation, it's like, well, that's I mean that's coward behavior. Either you are sticking by your beliefs and you're happy to voice them, or you're not. It's a bit different with some people where, as bad as it sounds as a journo, and because you want everybody to be engaged in the world and world events and everything like that, and everyone should be engaged. I'm also wary that at the end of the day, people have a right to be as engaged or disengaged as they want to be based on what they feel is best for them. I know a lot of journos go through ebbs and flows of how much they feel like they have to take in of other people's work as well, because in my situation, at the end of the day, I've got to come back to two kids at home, and do I want to be all the way deep in on American politics when I'm supposed to be at home? So, in a sense, I'm protective of people's right to disengage or keep it to themselves on some levels. But if you are someone who has used your platform, whether it's in person, social media, or otherwise, to voice an opinion one way, you need to be prepared to front that, because I think what I don't want to see is an increase of you don't want to see responses in my point of view anyway. You don't want to see views that are either insincere or uneducated, because I don't necessarily want a question to be asked to a footy player who's just going to give you the party line that he was told by the club and the AFL or whatever, because that doesn't really, no one's more enlightened for that. We don't know more about the player and where they stand. All we know is that, the memo from AFL HQ or whatever, AFL, NRL, whatever, A-League. We just know that the memo got through down to the player and he knew to say that. So I don't like insincere, but I also don't like uneducated. I don't want a player to just spew off the cuff and project something that is perhaps dangerous and elevate that even more. So, but I don't know. It's this balancing act of you want people to show their misgivings and maybe their ignorance on certain issues, so that you can, challenge it and educate. But at the same time, sometimes I don't, as we've seen with the social media sphere at the moment. Sometimes just the proliferation of opinions that are super uninformed. Sometimes it's not for the best. I know it's a long answer, but like it's a. I want more educated opinions. I want more people to care, and I don't want us to just be in a position where, oh geez, they're available for media. Well, we've got to get this question to them. If it's
It
if there's not going to be anything substantive to come out of it.
it reminds me of your take, and I agree with it for the most part. Is the I'm reminded of there was a philosophy professor at Deakin, and he wrote a piece in the conversation when I was in about year 8, and so I was sort of starting to engage with the world, and it was titled, I might put it in the show notes, but it's called "No, You're Not Entitled to Your Opinion," and his premise, his name's Patrick Stokes. I think he's still at Deakin. But his argument is that you're not entitled to an opinion, you're entitled to what you can defend. And to the extent that you engage with whatever your opinion is on whatever the matter might be, you are entitled to what you can back up fundamentally. And I remember, again, 2012, like, was when that came out, and that was sort of around the time. I don't like using this language, but I'm going to because it's expedient. It was peak ISIS, right? In the sense that
Yeah.
it was a particular time for the Muslim community in Australia, and sort of what I was going through was a particular wave of anti-immigration sentiment. And the defence at the time was like we were heading into stop the boats 2013 federal election. Sort of Pauline Hanson was prosecuting a case of, well, I'm entitled to my opinion. I don't like immigrants. And I'm entitled to that view. And the basis on which I'm entitled to that view is like a fundamental right to free speech, and I don't have to substantiate it. And I think, like you say, it does exacerbate. It gets exacerbated when people go, well, okay, that's a good enough basis to repeat it or and we're not engaging with it further. But yes, I do always come back to
in
that.
very, very simple terms. It's like being given an essay of being tasked with the essay of saying, what's the best movie of all time? And you're like, The Godfather. It's like, oh, why? Just is.
Just is.
You ask me what
exactly.
it is, that's what it is. No, but we'll at least give me something here. Give us something to work with to get where you're coming from. You're saying it's the best. Why is it the best? You're saying this is dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Give us actual substantive, and obviously not to get too far into politics, but that's not really my wheelhouse at the best of times. But that's obviously one of the things that is going to be challenging One Nation now that they've had a perceived surge in popularity, which is, okay, you've been on the defensive. That's been your thing for some time now, is being on the defensive and firing shots. Policy making.
You see, now you need to make a positive case.
Actually making a positive case of, we've told you how we're going to stop Australia getting worse. Here's how we're going to make it better.
Exactly.
In our view.
Exactly. We've articulated why you shouldn't vote for the other guys. Now, why should you vote for us?
Yeah, exactly. That'll be the question for the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I guess on the personal, blending the personal with the professional, I guess, and this is something that you and I have discussed off air at some length, the one public story that has sort of captured the imagination of the AFL public over the off-season and has been, and I shouldn't even put it in those terms of captured the imagination, because it is in some ways, as we've discussed, has felt confected, is the Lockie Neale saga. And that's, again, like a very blunt level of sort of terminology there, because it is a family, the breakup of a family. But I guess I wanted to get into, because there's a couple of these as well. There's, I saw the meme put to me today. Again, it's insensitive, but I saw the meme put to me today of George Bush getting the message in the ear on 9/11. It's like a third breakup has hit the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah.
And I guess that maybe sums it up a little bit of, to what extent are we obligating professional athletes to bring their personal to work, and to what extent should, in this case, my understanding it's a case of alleged infidelity. To what extent are you obligated to lose the captaincy of your football club, which is a professional obligation, for that, or give it up, as the case may be?
Yeah, and one of the things I didn't like about the Lockie Neale situation was how flippantly people were comparing it to Wayne Carey's situation, where it's just they are two fundamentally different situations. One tore the fabric of the best club of the 90s. Like one just ripped at the fabric of one of the power clubs of the competition at the time. And Lockie's situation, it is personal, and the only reason, in my opinion, that it became a bigger story that it did was, unlike pretty much any other player in that club, apart from Harris Andrews, Lockie had something to lose. He had something to take away. Other players, if you don't have a title, they can't take anything away from you. They're not going to suspend. They were never going to suspend anybody. You're not going to suspend anyone for literally just what is a personal matter. It is nothing more than a personal matter. Is it disappointing for people that look up to certain players for whatever reason and put them up on a pedestal? Yeah, of course it is. But the only reason it became a bigger story, and I'll admit, like when when a lot of people heard that, oh, he's fronting the media, there was there was an inherent feeling of, well, we've all got to stand around the TV and watch that presser. Like there's that almost embarrassing human engagement with it where you're like, I don't like it, but I am interested. But then it's jumped the shark because okay, his the one thing that could be taken away from him from a professional aspect has been his captaincy's been taken away from him. What what now? There's nothing else to go on. It's a personal matter. It's not a situation there's nothing before the courts. There's nothing from a legal standpoint that necessitates the ongoing following of it apart from just gossip stuff. Gossip's been around for ages. This isn't a new thing, and but then you see the other things where it's, hey, we just this is the bar we're setting for ourselves now. We're reporting on. I say we. Channel 9 has not, but like certain outlets are. We're just reporting on player breakups now, and
Is there? Oh, sorry.
yeah, we're reporting on player breakups, and we're reporting on the breakups of people who are 21, as if that's a sign of cultural problems at a footy club. A man, like a person in his early 20s, breaking up with they're going separate ways with their girlfriends. It's just like that's the stuff where I'm like, the Lockie situation you could always see as, all right, this is bigger than just a family thing because he's got the title to take away, and the title of captain comes with elevated responsibilities. You can argue how many of them fall in the professional realm and how many of them fall in the personal realm. And it's the same reason why there's so many great players who have been the best player in their teams have never been captain. Because the captain takes a certain type of, I don't want to say type of person because in my gut I don't think this is going to affect Lockie on the field. I just don't think it will. I think he's going to be an absolute gun. But it takes a type of person to project out to the public. In the same way that Nick Maxwell was not the best player of Collingwood in those years when they won the premiership. But you're not going to put the members of the Rat Pack in as captains, even though they're much better players than Nick Maxwell. But I don't know. It's a tough one in that I think it deserved its dash initially, but then it's overstayed its welcome to the point where it's this is just getting mean. It's just getting mean spirited now, and it gets to the stage where it's like, okay, we're just and it's been like this for some time now in terms of probably the last 10 years. Treating social media comments as quotes, and the best thing about social media comments is that unlike a vox pop on television, you can infer what you want. You
You
can
can pick and choose the ones you
you
like.
you can pick and choose. One emoji to someone might be one thing, it might be something totally else to another. We're just putting it out there, and then it builds that intrigue where it's like, what are we actually trying to what are we trying to achieve here? And where does the line get where does the line get drawn? If there's a high profile bust up at the Gold Coast Suns, does Queensland have a football culture problem? Where does the line like that's what I want to know is where does the line end when we just continue to report on people's personal lives, especially when it doesn't go into the legal aspect. It's totally different if it becomes a legal matter. Obviously, that's totally different kettle of fish. But if this is purely just that was not the done thing, Yep. Then it's just sad. We're talking about a family unit. There's no longer
Mm.
together and children involved, and it's just tragic, and I don't think it should be elongated in the media through other means of, hey, this person broke up. Just remember, doesn't that remind you of when this guy broke up? And just
I
pulling those
think
strings together.
there's also sort of like obviously, and like this is sort of inferred in this conversation as well, but it is worth, I guess, bearing explicitly that a lot of that is out of care for Lockie's former partner as well, right?
Hmm.
And what comes out of Jules, Neil, and the other people, the other parties involved, and sort of the care that comes with that, because a lot of that hasn't been sort of borne out to them either. But I guess I'm interested in your remark earlier about, in the first instance, it's play on. At least the initial reporting of it, you, I guess, fundamentally think it's a story. And I guess I want to pick at that a little bit of, is it a story? Is it in the public interest because the public's interested, or what? Like, I guess what part of that? Yeah, is it in the public interest because the public's interested?
I mean, I've always very much been of the situation that or the opinion that I think Lockie could easily continue on as captain. Knowing, knowing what I know about footy clubs, I don't think that they are professionals. I don't think there are people at that club that are going to look at his personal life and say, listen, I just can't, go to bat for this guy. I can't walk out with him and play my best footy. I don't think that's the case at all. I still think Lockie tomorrow could captain the Brisbane Lions. Um, the only reason I say it was newsworthy, and as I mentioned before, it was more so coincidence or happenstance than anything. It was only newsworthy because he was one of two players that had something to lose. That's why. No other player had something that you could take away from them or deem as, hey, wherever this grey area is of the standards we want to project as a culture and a family club and stuff, you know, whatever those cultures are and that grey area is, unfortunately, you're just one of the two of the 40 players on the list that we rely on to uphold those standards publicly. That's the thing. Um, Again, I don't. If he wasn't captain, I don't think you would have seen any measure from um, from the club. That's my opinion. I just don't, because what could a club have done? Usually it's in house. Usually for there's if there's indiscretions that aren't in front of the courts, it's in house suspension or a fine. They're not going to do that. Like no club's going to do that for a personal matter that just involves a marriage bust up. But unfortunately, given how publicly it it played out through social media and the reporting from social media, you just find yourself in a position where the again, like I said, he's one of two players that has a title that people can clamour for, and there can be a groundswell for. Because if he wasn't captain, what groundswell would there bubble up to be? They're not going to sack him. You know,
Yeah, what can you call for?
what can you tour and what can you call for? You're not going to call for a game suspension. Like it's it's uh it's just not going to happen. So that I think it's an unfortunate situation all round on every single level. It is a tragic story that nobody wants to see. Nobody should want to be no should be nobody should want to see. Nobody should be clamoring for the gossip and the tea that results in a family unit being split up and children not having that amount of time with both parents as they should if people had acted differently. That's the problem that I have with it is the excitement around, and maybe it just hits me harder because I got two young kids, but I'm just like, that's the thing that gets to me where it's like you have this frothing fervor of just like, oh, I just need the next drop in the saga comes. It's like, what saga? They've split up. He's no longer captain. I don't see where it goes from here. That's the problem. Like, humans, man, we
I
suck.
guess the the clamoring is an interesting one as well because there is a clamor. There is a clamor, I guess, for this sort of stuff, and it often falls. And you and I discussed the bounces of this, and then not just and the door stops and so on, and not just this, but the Ginnivan bounce as well, infamously. But I guess, what do you run me through? I guess if you can, the sort of the dynamics of a newsroom when the opportunity to bounce someone or doorstop someone in that scenario happens, because I guess there is a little bit of a culture, particularly in a print newsroom, of getting the kid to do it, and the responsibility gets put on a cadet or an intern, not an intern necessarily, but a young reporter with little experience, but B, probably more importantly, little agency. I remember, story time now, but when Ash Barty first fell pregnant with her first child, I was a very new sports reporter. It was it was one of the very first stories I ever wrote, and we can see where this is going. I didn't have choice. It was actually, I think it might have been the very first story I ever wrote for News Corp as a sports reporter, and it was, hey, we've been given these photographs, and by given, obviously they've sent a snapper out there. To catch Ash Barty's gone for a walk for the first time since she started to show with her first child. And you're going to write it up. And so I wrote the story up, and I had not at this point learned the fine art of the staff writer's byline. And so there's a story out there with my name on it that is to the effect of Ash Barty steps out for a walk, exclusive. News Corp's got the exclusive. Now, you'll be familiar with this.
Done.
Thank you.
Exclusive.
Thank you. Got the scoop. Exactly. Thank you very much. And you'll be familiar with this in Brisbane. Obviously, it's a one-paper town. And Brisbane-based athletes have, to a varying extent, an established working relationship with the Courier Mail. And my understanding is that that was... My understanding of that, this is secondhand, but I was told after the fact that was not received well by the Barty family, and subsequently this athlete who had a really solid working relationship with the Courier Mail, when it was time to do the double page spread and what would have been like a big double page spread and a feature interview in the Courier Mail when she gave birth to her first child, ended up being an announcement on Instagram that caught everybody by surprise, and the Courier Mail didn't give it the heads up that they normally would. And so, like, not that is the life and death, but when Ash gave birth to her first child, I got a text message from a snarky mate of mine who said, "Hey mate, have you seen this Instagram post? You cover the bump. You'd hate to miss the birth," and which just absolutely struck me to my core. And obviously, it was 9 months later, and I was in a very different position as a reporter, and it really put into perspective like what was important and where and how one should push back on these sorts of things, and really hit home a lesson learned. And I don't, I've never met Ash Barty in my life. I don't know what I would say if I met her. Not that she'd know that I was the responsible journo. But there's been more than a couple of stories.
She's got your face on a dartboard at home.
Just at home. and with her ability as well, she's hitting bullseye every time. Just on my big schnoz.
Yeah.
But there's been a couple of stories that I was really uncomfortable with, that one in particular, which I won't get into because the subject of that story is very much in the press at the moment. We can discuss that off air. But I apologised to the subject of that story 3 years later. And I said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do it at the time, and I pushed back at the time, and I was forced into it, and I didn't want to. And I'm really, really sorry for the impact that had on your life, and that had a debilitating, borderline suicidal impact on that person's life. And it's like something you live with, and that person is, really, really incredibly gracious, and I would say we're now friends, and we're friends as a result of that apology. But I guess fundamentally, like, take me through how these bounces work, where like Jules Neal or Tess Crossley, whoever it might be, is getting,
I mean,
harangued outside their house.
the fortunate thing, and one thing I will say, and I'm going to sound like the company man here.
No, that's good. That's good.
I think like Nine has been as a newsroom. I've been not surprised at all, but just incredibly impressed with how just level-headed and adult the newsroom that I work in Brisbane has been when it comes to the. I'm not sure if you can hear my son there.
No, you're good.
He wants to watch planes on the TV. Um, but
Bang a movie.
you
That's
know,
all
like
good.
the newsroom's been really just considered and professional the whole time, realizing that like we only covered the Lachie Neale pressing, and that was it. That's the news. That's the news. The news is that, hey, well, anytime a captain steps down unceremoniously, that's a story. That just is. It doesn't matter what for. That is a news story. Anything after that, unless it's through the courts, is a personal matter. And so we've been like I've been fortunate that I haven't been asked to, and no one else has in the news, and been asked to go and have those uncomfortable things where you are camped out the front of someone's home who hasn't done anything wrong. You know what I mean? It's very different. Like, you know, like you speak to a guy who once camped outside a hotel for 8 hours just to try and find the guy who hung a Nazi flag out the window. Like, I'm more than happy to camp
And
out and
did you
try
get
and.
it?
Oh yeah, we got it. Yeah, yeah. Because the guy in I had some intel on the inside who gave me some pictures of the guy from
Wow.
inside the like the camera on the elevator to show me what he looked like, and got him. But so like when it comes to like there are people that I think based on their actions deserve to be even. I mean, I don't really want to say deserved either, but I don't want to say deserve, but
There's
there
a
are people
public
that are
interest in covering them.
yeah there are people that it is much more warranted to find out what is on their mind in that particular moment. There are others where it's like, this doesn't feel like that. This feels like voyeurism. This feels like I'm sitting back with a I'm sitting back with a wine at my home watching a family dynamic implode. And it's like, where's the how do I get smarter? How do I get more educated? How do I know more about what's going on around me for having done that. And as it pertains to the editorial and stuff, like one of the things that I think served me at I say a young age, like I got into journalism pretty late. Like I got into journalism when I was 27. So I already had, by the time I moved up to Brisbane, I already had a 1 year old kid. So I already had like different priorities pulling me every which way. And it's not like I was in a position where I was desperate to impress or desperate to please and climb the ladder and go somewhere. So one thing that benefited me is I was always really happy to have a blue. Like with my if I didn't fundamentally agree with something, I was more than happy to have it out with whoever was making that decision at the time or whoever was calling for it. And if that meant and this was in when I was in Wagga, this was when I was in this was since I've been up to Brizzy. Um, be prepared to have it out with someone. If you're like, I don't agree with that. But again, what we were saying before, have your reasons. I don't agree with that, and these are the reasons why. And if they say, well, that's what we want, and then you can, if you're there's power in saying, well, if that's what you want, we have a whole newsroom full of journos. How would you like to ask one of them to go and do it if they feel more comfortable doing it?
Mm,
At the end of the
mm.
day, that's what you can do. Like as a journo, if you're not sitting in the corner office, dictating, what the go is. That's the extent of what you can do. And eventually, if like hopefully your news sense is good enough that you get enough runs on the board so that when you do perhaps push back or something, or you say, "Hey, I know we were kind of looking to go down this path, but it doesn't feel right at the moment. The sentiment really isn't there. But we're going to become public enemy number one if we take this route. Like no one's going to be championing journalism if we do this. They're just going to look at us as, like grubs or vultures or whatever. Like if you can get comfortable early on, kind of finding that pushback line respectfully, then it's going to serve you better down the track, and you're going to avoid being put in those positions where you have to be in that situation where you have to ask really, really ethically, ethically contradictory decisions,
Uncomfortable
basically.
questions of yourself as well, right? Like,
Mm.
and I'm glad you put it in that way. I might even, that might be the clip there. But like, I think it's such a valuable lesson for not just younger journalists, but you often have this at, multinational media companies that will remain nameless. But you often have the phenomenon of a reporter whose personal politics or whose personal ethics seriously seem to contradict. It's such a common thing in Australia,
Mm.
a young News Corp or a young Daily Mail reporter or whatever, and you take the job because it's the job that, it's the job that's there. You dance with the girl that brought you, and you sit there and go, you look at their reporting and you go, fuck, like I know what you're like as an individual, and that article, that podcast, that PCC wasn't you. And you ask them about it, you call them about it, you hear them articulate, and they say, well, you have to, right? You have to because that's the job. And I saw one reporter in question, again, I'm nameless, but who kept pushing that. It was on Gaza, and we knew what their politics were like, and it was one thing at the pub and a very different thing, a very aggressive, different tone in print,
Mm.
and it makes it easy to maintain those social circles and maintain those friendships and maintain those connections. And I'm very grateful, barring the one example that I just named, or the two examples I just named, I guess. One of which I guess I went along with out of ignorance, but barring the one example I just named, and it was part of the reason I quit the company, was I never had, whenever I pushed back at News Corp, I never had a second sort of, there was never an argument. It was, you're uncomfortable? Okay, fine, we'll find someone else.
Mm.
And we'll find someone who is comfortable. And I'm not going to ask that of you. And I guess fundamentally the lesson is, like, even at, Big Evil News Corp, no one has a gun to your head. And there will, because fundamentally, I mean, in News Corp's case, because there will always be someone else. But no one has a gun to your head, and you have the choice, and you always have the choice to conduct your journalism career in a way that you see fit, and the way that you see ethical. And I think even though I started this segment with the young reporter doesn't get to go, the young reporter doesn't get a say, I think maybe a good takeaway is that the young reporter maybe has more agency than sometimes they think.
Mm.
And you have and subsequently I think you have a responsibility to go about whatever you're doing in an ethical sense.
Well, at the end of the day, it's also good people management to have bosses respect that opinion and respect that, because what's going to cause burnout quicker than being forced to do stories repeatedly that you're uncomfortable doing? It's like, you if a boss forces you to do that, then you're just going to see turnover, and you're just going to see more people leaving, And all right, someone might feel good in the moment of saying, well, they didn't, but he uphold our values, or everybody's got to pull in the same direction. It's like, okay, well, you can keep saying that, and you can keep rehiring people because that's all you're going to do because you're not listening enough to them. And I genuinely do believe, like, I've never been a person who I do always hate seeing the people who, um, because they don't agree with a particular editorial byline of some place, and they say, "Oh, everyone should get sacked. Everyone should lose their jobs." It's like, there are places who have strong opinion writers, and they get all the push on socials and everything like that. But for those opinion writers that get all the glory and probably the better paychecks and all that stuff, there's a ton of boots on the ground journos who are actually like going and knocking on doors for CCTV for crimes that happen in your suburb and stuff like that. And without those journos and without that continuing, all we're going to see is what we are continuing to see now, which is people from the comfort of their home aggregating news that they see online and then just providing their opinion on it and creating a following as if they are newsbreakers, when in actual fact they're just commentators on the news on the stories that are being done by other people. So I yeah, I'm 34 and I'm still optimistic about working in journalism, which is a good thing. Like, I'm not, a lot of people go to the comms world. Obviously, it's very tempting for a lot of people, but there's still a lot of stuff that you can do and achieve, and a lot of good that you can do in this role as a journalist. And there's something quite awesome about being able to get out to just the streets and see different people and talk to different people. You can, in Brisbane, one morning, one morning you are up just chin wagging with people in Redcliffe talking about how the Dolphins are going, and then the next day you're in Currabee talking to the local Muslim community, and then the next day you can be in Sunnybank, a heavy Asian population, and you're still finding out different things about different people and about what concerns them, what worries them, what's going through their mind, and that's a cool thing to be able to do. Apart from just say, bugger, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. Like, there's still like a lot of good stuff to come out of it. It's just that sometimes you gotta maybe fight a little harder to try and find those stories and get those stories through.
I think that optimism is a good point on which to end. I know we wanted to have a conversation about our best mate Kane Corns and sort of the sports dynamics about that, but I think that optimism is a good point, and we've given the listeners what the Great Cricketer Boys would call a dividend. I promised you a 45-minute conversation and to be out with your children, and I have held
Stay
you.
in and stay tuned, because what is it? What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Fireball Friday. So that's when we come back for the follow-up pod where we just give our hottest takes of the week.
I'll bring you back for a bonus pod. Let's do it. I'll bring you back for a bonus pod. Let's see how the numbers go, and we'll follow the numbers because that's what Colin Cowherd would do, and then we'll bring you back. We need to have a chat. Actually, there's so much. What a big day! Like today, as we record today, the Washington Post laid off an extraordinary number of journalists, and our hearts go out to them, my friends as well. But it is an absurd day to basically, by one estimate in the Ringer, up to 99% of the sports desk at the Washington Post be laid off on the same day that Anthony Davis gets traded to the Wizards. It is completely absurd to me.
And thus the Anthony Davis wheel keeps on turning.
Continues. And if I was my best friend in the world is a big Golden State fan, but he's like, if I was a Dallas fan, I would find a new team, and I think that's a very diplomatic It's a very diplomatic way of
Oh well,
putting it.
you're
How
looking at a Minnesota Vikings fan who gave away Sam Darnold last year, who's playing in the Super Bowl on those. So I'm just like, but then again, I actually no, I won't be a revisionist and say why'd we do that. It's like I was team get rid of Darnold because it was like, come on, what's more likely? 7 years of subpar play and one flash in the pan? Yeah, let's get rid of him. Let's be smart here. And then it turns out it just wasn't smart. And then the cycle of Minneapolis misery continues endlessly.
we don't know anything. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, we don't know anything.
I know enough to know that I know nothing. That's why I don't gamble.
I wish I was as smart as you. Ned Balme, thank you very much for joining us on Perceived Pressure, mate. It has been an absolute
Uh,
pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Go out, go out and get yourself a copy of the clubs. Huh? This bad boy right here.